The flowers. We share. The morning mist hung heavy over Greenwood Cemetery, wrapping around the old gravestones like a soft gray blanket. Sarah Mitchell walked slowly along the gravel path, her worn shoes crunching softly with each step. In her hands, she carried a small bundle of pink carnations, the cheapest flowers she could find at the grocery store. Every Saturday morning, she made this same journey. Rain or shine, cold or warm, Sarah came to visit the grave of Eliza Chase. She had never met Eliza Chase in life. She didn't know what the woman had looked like, or how she had sounded when she laughed. But Sarah felt a connection to this grave that she couldn't quite explain. Perhaps it was because they shared the same first name. Eliza was Sarah's middle name, given to her by her grandmother. Or perhaps it was simply the loneliness she felt in her own life that drew her to this quiet spot. Sarah knelt beside the simple gray headstone, ignoring the dampness that seeped through her thin dress. She removed the dried flowers from last week and replaced them with the fresh carnations, arranging them carefully in the small vase that sat at the base of the stone. "Good morning, Eliza," she whispered as she always did. "I hope you're resting peacefully." The cemetery was empty at this early hour, just as Sarah preferred. She liked the solitude, the gentle silence broken only by the sound of birds in the distant trees. Here she could forget for a moment about her cramped apartment, her 2 jobs and the stack of unpaid bills waiting on her kitchen table. Her daughter, little Emma, had asked that morning why Mommy was going out so early again. Sarah had simply kissed her forehead and told her it was something she needed to do. She couldn't explain it to a 6-year-old. How could she make Emma understand that visiting this stranger's grave had become the one peaceful moment in her chaotic week? Sarah sat back on her heels, looking at the dates carved into the stone. Eliza Chase had died young, at only 32 years old, the same age Sarah was now. The stone was simple, without the elaborate decorations that adorned some of the wealthier graves nearby. No angels, no lengthy inscriptions, just a name and dates. "I brought you the pink ones today," Sarah said softly. "They reminded me of spring, even though winter isn't quite done with us yet." She stayed for a while, as she always did, finding comfort in the quiet. The fog was beginning to lift, revealing more of the cemetery grounds. Sarah could see the ancient oak trees that stood like silent guardians over the sleeping souls beneath the earth. After about 20 minutes, Sarah prepared to leave. She had to get back home to Emma, then head to her first job at the diner. But as she stood and brushed off her dress, she heard footsteps approaching on the gravel path. A man emerged from the thinning fog. He was tall, wearing an expensive dark overcoat that contrasted sharply with the humble surroundings. His shoes were polished leather, and everything about him spoke of wealth and refinement. Beside him walked a little girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, wearing a pink dress and red shoes. The man was holding her hand carefully, as if she were made of precious glass. Sarah felt suddenly self-conscious of her faded dress and worn coat. She stepped aside, assuming they were passing by to visit another grave. But the man stopped directly in front of her. More precisely, he stopped in front of Eliza Chase's grave. His face went pale as he stared at the fresh flowers Sarah had just placed there. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying a strange mixture of confusion and something else Sarah couldn't quite identify. "Did you put those flowers there?" Sarah nodded, feeling like she'd been caught doing something wrong. "Yes, I come every week. I'm sorry, I didn't think anyone would mind. If this is your family's grave, I can stop—" "No," the man interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "No, please don't stop. It's just—" He paused, looking down at the little girl beside him. "That's my wife's grave." Sarah felt her breath catch. "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I didn't know she had. I didn't know anyone came here. I've been visiting for 6 months, and I've never seen anyone else." The man's expression softened, though sadness still clouded his eyes. "We haven't been able to come," he said quietly. "My daughter Claire, she's been unwell. We've been traveling to different doctors, trying to find answers. We've been away for almost a year." He looked at the flowers again, and Sarah saw tears gathering in his eyes. "You've been putting flowers here? All this time?" "Every Saturday," Sarah admitted, feeling foolish now. I know it's strange. I never knew your wife. I felt drawn to this place, to her." The little girl, Claire, had been silent until now. She tugged on her father's hand and whispered something Sarah couldn't hear. The man nodded and looked back at Sarah. "My name is James Whitmore," he said, "and this is my daughter, Claire. Would you mind if I asked why? Why you chose my wife's grave?" Sarah hesitated, unsure how to explain something she barely understood herself. "My middle name is Eliza," she said finally. "My grandmother gave it to me. When I first walked through here, trying to find a peaceful place to think, I saw the name on the stone. It felt like a sign somehow, like I was meant to stop here." She looked down at her hands. "I've been going through a difficult time. Single mother, working 2 jobs, barely making ends meet. Coming here, bringing flowers, talking to Eliza. It helped me feel less alone. I know that probably doesn't make much sense." James shook his head slowly. "It makes perfect sense," he said, his voice wavering. "My wife, Eliza, she would have understood completely. She always noticed people who were struggling. She volunteered at shelters, helped at food banks. She had the kindest heart of anyone I've ever known." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photograph, handing it to Sarah. The woman in the picture had gentle eyes and a warm smile. She was holding a baby. Claire, Sarah realized. "She died shortly after Claire was born," James continued. "Complications no one expected. I built my company, became successful, gave Claire everything money could buy, but I couldn't bring her mother back. And then Claire got sick, and we've been chasing treatments across the country." Sarah handed back the photograph carefully. "Is she better now?" James looked down at his daughter with infinite tenderness. "She's improving. The doctors finally found the right treatment. That's why we're back. We came straight here from the airport." Claire pulled on her father's hand again and whispered something else. James smiled for the first time since arriving. "Claire wants to know if you'll be here next Saturday, too." Sarah felt tears prick her own eyes. "If you'd like me to be. I don't want to intrude on your family time." "Intrude?" James's voice cracked slightly. "You've been keeping my wife's memory alive when I couldn't be here. You've been bringing her flowers, talking to her, visiting her. That's not an intrusion. That's a gift." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Sarah, I don't believe in coincidences. My wife's name, your connection to this place, the fact that you've been here during the months we couldn't be, there's meaning in this." He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "My company is always looking for good people. People with heart. But more than that, I think Claire and I could use a friend. Someone who understands loss and keeps showing up anyway." Sarah looked at the card, then at the grave, then at the man and his daughter standing before her in the lifting fog. She thought about how she'd felt drawn to this place, how the simple act of bringing flowers had somehow sustained her through her darkest months. "I'd like that," she said softly. "I'd like that very much." Claire smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reminded Sarah of the woman in the photograph. The little girl reached out and took Sarah's hand with her free one, so that she stood between her father and Sarah, connecting them. They stood together in silence for a moment. 3 people brought together by love and loss and flowers left on a grave. The fog continued to lift, and the sun broke through the clouds, casting gentle light over the cemetery. Sarah realized that she'd come here looking for peace, but she'd found something more. She'd found purpose. She'd found connection. And now, perhaps, she'd found hope. "Same time, next Saturday?" James asked. Sarah nodded, squeezing Claire's small hand gently. "Same time. I'll bring the flowers." "We'll bring flowers too," Claire said, her voice small but clear. "Mommy likes pink ones." Sarah smiled through her tears. "Yes," she said. "She does." As they parted ways that morning, Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. The weight she'd been carrying felt lighter. The loneliness that had dogged her steps felt less oppressive. She walked back through the cemetery gates with her head held a little higher, knowing she would return not as a lonely visitor to a stranger's grave, but as someone who belonged to a story of connection, compassion, and the mysterious ways that sorrow can lead us to exactly where we need to be. Behind her, James and Claire stood together at Eliza's grave, and Sarah knew that the flowers she'd left there had been tending to more than just a memory. They'd been keeping hope alive for all of them.